It begins with a sound, the quiet, sterile click of a computer mouse, alone in a dark room. Someone is deep in the official U.S. State Department archives. A white page, blue hyperlinks. They're looking at the declassified history section, the public record. A link appears, the 1983 war scare. They click. The page loads, a white screen, and then a jarring digital stamp right over the text. Red letters, document withheld. Stop, right there. This just happened. This isn't history, this is now. A 40-year-old file, a dusty, forgotten piece of Cold War history, suddenly erased, wiped from the official record right in front of our eyes. And when I saw what that file was, well, that's why I'm making this video. Because that deletion, it's not history, it's a warning. To understand why the government is hiding this file today, we have to go back. We have to see what really happened in the fall of 1983. The normal world in 1983 was paranoia. In West Germany, rain slicks the concrete of a Pershing II missile silo. Young American soldiers, not much older than 19, stand guard under harsh floodlights, their hands gripping rifles. These weren't old missiles. They were new. They were fast. They could hit Moscow in 10 minutes. Back in the United States, a family sits in a wood-paneled living room watching a brand new movie on a boxy television. The movie is called War Games. It's about a computer simulation accidentally starting World War III. It was supposed to be entertainment, but in 1983, it felt a little too real. Because in the real world, the news was relentless. President Reagan had just gone on television and called the Soviet Union the evil empire. A few weeks later, the Soviets shot down a civilian passenger jet, Korean Airlines Flight 007. 269 people, including a U.S. congressman, dead. The world was closer to a real nuclear exchange than at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The paranoia on both sides was thick enough to choke on. And it's into that tinderbox, at that exact moment of peak paranoia, that NATO decided to light a match. They greenlit an operation, the single largest, most realistic, most aggressive simulation of a full-scale nuclear first strike in history. They called it Able Archer 83, and the Soviets had no idea it was a game.
So what was this system? This game the Soviets had no idea about? On the surface, it had a boring, bureaucratic name, Able Archer 83. It was just a command post exercise, something NATO did every single year like clockwork, a dry run, a fire drill. But in 1983, the game was different. The rulebook had been rewritten. This year, they weren't just practicing a few small steps. They were simulating the entire horrifying timeline. A full-scale escalation from a conventional ground war in Germany, all the way to DEFCON 1, nuclear launch. Inside the NATO command bunkers, it was a simulation. It was blue icons on a glowing green screen. It was officers moving plastic markers across a giant map of Europe. But to make the game feel real for the players, the system had to mimic reality perfectly. And this is where the two worlds begin to split. This is the hidden system. Because mimicking reality meant acting in reality. For the first time, the game used brand new top-secret communication codes, the exact same codes they would use in a real war. The game also demanded total radio silence on all old normal channels, except for these new encrypted ones. The game didn't just involve low-level officers. It involved the actual, real-world leaders. Prime Minister Thatcher, the West German Chancellor, they were part of the drill. And the game involved real B-52 bomber pilots in their real planes, taxiing on their real runways, practicing the new streamlined procedures for nuclear release orders. And here is the problem. It's a big one. To make a simulation realistic, you have to act realistically. You have to fool your own side into taking it seriously. You have to use the secret codes. You have to move the real people to their real planes. But what if you do such a good job that you accidentally fool the other side too? Because you have to remember, the Soviets aren't in the NATO bunker. They're on the outside, in the dark, listening. They are already paranoid. They are already terrified of those new Persian II missiles that can hit Moscow in 10 minutes. And what do they see? They see a sudden, massive, and unexplained surge in high-level NATO communications. Then they see all the old familiar channels go dead. Eerily, total radio silence. Then their listening posts pick up a flood of new secret-coded messages they've never heard before and can't encrypt. Then their spies and informants start sending frantic reports. The troops are moving. The leaders are in their bunkers. The nuclear-capable bombers are on the tarmac. Inside a damp, concrete KGB listening post in East Germany, the teletype machines aren't printing beep-boop. They are clacking, 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 printing urgent, all-caps messages. Because from their perspective, this is the checklist. This is the exact step-by-step sequence they were trained to look for. This is what a real first strike looks like. The simulation was a perfect mirror of a real war. Every detail, every code, every movement. It was a flawless system. And that was the fatal flaw. Because in a perfect mirror, how could you ever tell the difference between the simulation and the real thing?
The Soviets couldn't tell the difference. The mirror was too perfect, and the machine began to accelerate. In the NATO bunkers, they were playing at war. In the Soviet bunkers, they believed it was war. The intel started to pour in, not simulations, real intelligence from real spies about a real panic. The teletype machines start to clack, faster, urgent. The messages are fragments. All units, high alert. Soviet air bases, loading warheads. Nuclear-rated bombers on standby. This is the part that for me is just terrifying. The game is still happening. The Americans and the British are playing at DEFCON 1. And in East Germany and Poland, Soviet pilots are actually running to their jets. They're loading real nuclear bombs. It's not a game anymore. The simulation is now an engine, driving a real-world response. The Soviets are arming their planes to respond to an attack that isn't happening. And there is only one man, sitting in a quiet intelligence room in Europe, who sees both sides of the map at once. His name is Lieutenant General Leonard Perroots, and he's the only one who sees it. The machine is broken. The system is screaming. The intelligence is a barrage of panic. Every procedure, every protocol, every war plan demands one response: escalate. Meet the threat. Raise the U.S. alert level. Prepare our own bombers. Show them we're ready. This is the moment. The world is holding its breath. We see the Soviet bombers on their snowy runways, engines powering up. We see the NATO command post, unaware, still playing the game. The noise, the alarms, the frantic teletype, it all builds to a single, unbearable crescendo. And then silence. General Perroots does nothing. He doesn't pick up the red phone. He doesn't signal an alert. He doesn't escalate. He sits. He watches. He thinks. He saved the world by not following the rules. Because in that chaotic, terrifying moment, he saw what the system couldn't see. He saw all the panicked signals, and he didn't see aggression. He saw fear. He realized the Soviets weren't preparing a first strike. They were terrified, preparing for a retaliatory one. They thought the game was real. And so he broke the cycle. He let the game play out. He let the clock run down. And quietly, the world stepped back from the edge. The crisis was over. And then he wrote a report. The report. A cold, precise, meticulous warning. A detailed blueprint of how the system broke. How it fed on its own paranoia. How a simulation almost became an apocalypse. He handed it to his bosses. And for 40 years, it was buried. And now, it's been erased. Which leads to the final question. Why? Why this report? Why now? Because the answer is cold. That 1983 report wasn't just about 1983. It wasn't about Reagan or missiles or the Cold War. It was about a system that is fed bad information, a system that escalates on its own, a system that can't tell the difference between a simulation and reality, a system that is now running our entire world. Our modern defenses, our AI, our algorithms, they are the Able Archer system. Just faster, colder, more efficient. In the end, that deleted report wasn't just a secret. It was a warning. A warning from the one man who saw the machine, the system, get a taste of Armageddon. It shows how a fake reality can create a real one if you're not paying attention. And so we're back where we started. That dark room, that quiet click of a mouse, that white web page, and the red letters. Document withheld. It's not just a censored file anymore. It's a blueprint for a future disaster, a warning we've decided to ignore. And it leaves you with this, just cold, awful question. If we just deleted the only report that told us how to stop it, how do we know it's not happening again, right now? It's the terrifying fragility of human control in a world we've automated to destroy itself.